Nerdy Geeks, happy Monday. I believe I've talked about this somewhere on the WordNerd channel, probably on multiple chats. The fact that I need to know my character's name before I can write them, and that puts me in just so many corners. And just as a parent names a child, naming your character is very important because you're going to be with them for a really long time and you want them to connect with that name. However, there's an awful lot of things that go into naming a child that you might not think about if you're not a parent yourself, so let me go into a couple of those today. First off is pretty easy, and that's the genre that you're writing in. If you're writing in a fantasy genre, you're probably not going to name your main character Tim. Names you would use nowadays, like Samantha or Gerald, are not usual names that you see popping up in YA fantasies. Why? Because they're pretty normal. Everyone has an Uncle Bob, and you probably went to school with a girl named Sarah. Maybe 6 of them in one class. So fantasy names like Drax or Gamora, those work because they're a bit different. They're still pronounceable, but they're not altogether displeasing to the ear. If you just keyboard smash and then like add a vowel or two, that does not count as making up fantasy names, and I'm tired of people thinking that they can do that. But I think the best piece of advice, and for some reason the most simple, yet the most not enacted, is the fact that write names that fit who your character is. If you're writing a story about Japanese people, use Japanese names. If you're writing a story about Vikings, use Viking names. It's pretty simple. Another thing you have to think about is where they are born, because if you have a peasant and you have a king, they're probably going to have pretty different names. For example, no matter where you go in the world, no matter how far back you go, royalty always have utterly ridiculous names and usually like 18 titles behind that name. If your king character is named Cornelius Rosario Nathaniel Pottermore the Fifth, that like makes sense because it's pretentious and it has a lot of titles behind it that have to do with royalty. But if that's the name of like the shop boy, something seems a little out of place. Maybe his name is just Cornelius, or maybe his name is just Nathaniel. Maybe it's Nate. I don't know. You figure it out. Also have to think about family names. Do they have a last name? Is that even a thing? You have to think about if the children will take on the last name of the father or the mother. Do they have hyphenated last names? And then within the family, you gotta think about, are they characters that are related? Like, I know a lot of siblings have names that sound really familiar. For example, maybe you have sisters that are named Allie and Angela. Maybe you have 2 brothers named Damien and Dorian. Because it doesn't really make sense if you have one character named Tim and you have the other one named Cornelius Pimpernel Rosario Pottermore III. Doesn't really match. And lastly, also know that you don't have to stick with one name to a character. You can change their name 18 times if you want to make sure that it fits with them perfectly. It's totally okay to mix and match and switch stuff around, because I know I've done that a ton of times, and I'm sure a lot of you have too. Maybe you really like the name Colette, but your main character just does not fit that name at all. That's okay. You can put that name on the side and use it for a different character. I like naming characters a lot better because it's kind of like naming children, except not as permanent. Make sure to tune in at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time here on YouTube for our live chat. I will hopefully see you guys all there. And then in the meantime, I hope you have a good week. Bye!